can't repeat the past.
No.
Why, of course you can.
Hello, this is Orr-Ewing. I've begun a project interviewing old prep school masters and maybe one day mistresses. This is my second. It's with a teacher called Rory Darling, who has taught at many of the best prep schools in this country, as he will explain. And he embodies the sort of teacher I'm hoping to speak to. Someone who both went to school in and then taught in the prep school age before the accountability measures that came in, from what I can see, in the sort of 2000s. So they had much more freedom to teach. And I just wanted to explore this era because it seems that through the experimentation they were allowed, some of them came up with approaches and methods that were really effective, that were allowed, and that perhaps might be in danger of being lost today when things have become a bit more standardised and conformist. So it's a bit of a preservation exercise to speak to these people, hear about their lives, hear about their methods. The first interview I'm going to do is just about 10 minutes or so, and that's to get a sense of Rory's life and his entry into teaching. The second one's a bit longer. I've stitched it together, and that summarises Rory's approach to teaching and some of the methods that he used to teach both maths and history. Look forward to hearing what you think. Very much a work in progress. This is my second one, and I'm hoping to do more in the coming months. Thanks very much.
It's sort of, I think partly because Summerfields was the time that my career stopped going up and started going down. And it's quite difficult to write about your, not failures, but about things that are not, without sounding bitter. So I was finding myself getting bitter as I stopped. And I'm waiting until I stop feeling bitter.
Maybe we could start there. So you taught at Summerfields, Cothill. Okay.
Hall with David Carr, whose brother was captain of England.
Okay.
So cricket rules.
Yeah.
Aysgarth during the interregnum. Then to Summerfields.
Yeah.
Then to Ludgrove.
Yeah.
Back to Summerfields.
Yeah.
Chandley's Cothill Trust.
Yes.
Doing one-to-one up at Cothill, history and classical studies at Chandley's.
Yes.
And back to Ludgrove, and then Elstree.
But from my understanding, that's such an atypical jumping around. I mean, how
yes, it is relatively.
Given your
but it's all because of Mark Johnson's appointment at Cheam.
Okay, right.
I would have been a deputy head for him.
But it'd be great to hear the story of your entrance into prep school teaching.
I can tell you exactly the moment I finished Decline and Fall in my A-level year, and so enjoyed it and so recognised my own prep school. I put myself on what was called the IAPS list for people who were prepared to be able to work for a year. I went to Yarlett Hall, summoned by David Carr.
Aged 18.
Aged 18, having been in France all the way through July and August. And this is to start on the 4th of September. He said, and he just assumed I was coming.
So your parents were very supportive of going into teaching?
No. Not. They still didn't mind me doing it for a year. They certainly didn't want me to do it forever.
Right. So how was that? Tell me about that conversation.
They wanted me to join the army. I have two godfathers. One's a general, one as a retired colonel, and I think they very, very much pushed me. I did do a pre-RCB where we were. I think I'd done really rather well until we had this interview. They said, "Are there any questions you have for me?" And I said yes. And I didn't want to do it, so I had to make sure I got put. I said, "How will you handle the fact that I'm not prepared to kill anybody?" And this sort of retired colonel on the other side, was in the Royal Artillery, went. I said I'd be brilliant at organising things. I'd be superb at doing, me back, but I'm not prepared to kill anybody. And he said, "Well, I don't think the army's for you, really." That was it. Was reading Decline and Fall sent me to a Yarlett Hall. Sent me to my housemaster saying, "What should I do? I rather fancy working in a prep school." Because I had thoroughly enjoyed my prep school. There's no two ways about it. I had, there were unhappy moments in it, but my overarching memory was of being very well taught. I never needed to learn any more French. J.R. Watson, La Langue de Français, saw me through AO French without ever having to do. I never reached that level of French again that I achieved at prep school. I was good at maths. I loved history.
One of the words you keep on coming across, you read history of prep schools, is this word grounding. The best prep schools try to give their charges a real grounding.
Yes.
Was that what you received, do you think?
We did, and we were. I was aware that when you went to grim prep schools and you saw there, even as a child, people say that they went their prep schools, they never saw the staff and the staff were unapproachable. Our staff were not unapproachable. They were.
So this was in the 60s. 70s?
This is the 73 to 78.
Yeah.
They were in the same way. There was no unapproachability about them. Whereas you went to some schools, you were aware of a very much a distance between the staff and there were bad prep schools and there were good prep schools, and I was lucky enough to go to a very good one, where we were taught by exceptional, caring staff who really spent ages trying to make sure that you got it.
Yeah.
And there were children who went to bad prep schools where the staff were bored, disinterested and lazy.
Yeah.
Now, I went to a bad public school. The other reason that I decided to eventually become a teacher was because I suddenly realised I had been at a school with quite a lot of lazy people. I had a lazy housemaster who didn't work hard at helping his house. Bullying was rife. Both of my brothers utterly loathed it. Chris Potter came in just as I was leaving and started a reform. But we had a truly dreadful housemaster before that who came in once a week. My brother still, he just utterly, he was 2 years older than me.
Right.
I was lucky to have a group of friends who I still keep in touch with. We were just lucky. We were a group that liked each other.
Yes.
So
are you saying that you sort of saw how transformational school could be, both positively and negatively?
Yeah. And we're certainly aware that the boys who arrived from Caldecott, and we now know why the boys arriving from Caldecott had this sort of kind of problem.
Yes.
Because there at their school, clearly what the boys knew what was going on behind the scene, because the boys talk to each other and boys know.
Yes.
And I had never come across this.
So there wasn't anything back in those days that was systemically wrong with the system.
No. It was just if you had a problem like Caldecott clearly did. Yeah. And they were ruthless on the rugby field. And they were ruthless in the classroom. Yeah. But you were aware of these boys who had learnt not to trust the staff, and we were very trusting. But Temple Grove had scandals, like all prep schools had them. But I was happy as a child, and Ridian wrote about parents trusting. I think my parents trusted the school.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you. That do you think that the problems at Caldecott and perhaps other schools at the time were nonetheless a result of an over-trusting culture between parents and the school?
Yeah, I think people assumed that, as a result now we sort of codify a Britishness. Yes. In those days, it was assumed that everybody was singing off the same hymn sheet. Yes. And in the same way that there was abuse in children's homes, there's abuse in the army, there's abuse in the church, there's abuse in football, in all sectors of society. The rotten apples were ruining things for things around them, but they were just isolated rotten apples. But as a country, we now feel we've got to throw all the apples out and write a new policy on keeping apples. In the assumption that the policy will stop there being any bad apples ever again. Yeah. Which is probably. But the trouble is, the bad apples know how to play the system because they played the old system, and as a result, it will always be. I mean, making a cast iron policy will not exist. And so, and the final thing is the laziness of the Wellington staff, with notable exceptions in the history department. But I don't ever remember anybody in the maths department. I did maths, politics, and history for A level. I don't remember, and politics was a bit of a joke. I don't remember anybody in the maths department ever running a tutorial, a one-to-one session, a seminar. We used to annoy the teachers in A levels because I think we recognised, we just taunted them.
Yeah.
We recognised that they weren't really very good. They were lazy.
Not particularly interested.
They weren't interested in us. We weren't interested in this. Therefore, and I'd never come across this teachers who just went through the motions. They went through the motions. They didn't lift a finger for any of us.
What were the intellectual standards like, both at the prep school and Wellington compared to now?
Prep school, it was only Horace really do it now. I was accelerated to the scholarship form.
From early on?
Yes, having come top of my form, I was jumped up.
Right.
And then did, I think, 2 academic years just in the scholarship form.
So give me a sense of what that looked like.
We were 7 or 8 of us.
Okay.
We all ended up with awards. Mine, very, very minor award at Wellington.
But you were sort of 11, and were you reading
I think
Shakespeare? What sort of level of maths?
Yes,
were you up to?
yes. I mean, we did binary when we were in the second forms. I was explaining it to an Eton scholarship candidate last week. He'd never come across binary or on the basis we had to do binary back in when we were 9. But I've often said to the boys, you learn so many more things. We only had one set of rules for games to learn, which was football in the winter, rugby in the Lent term, and cricket in the summer. And then somebody came and took athletics rather seriously, so we had to learn new rules for how to do a Frosby flop or something. But you have to learn so many things, new processes. Yeah. You're constantly bombarded. Learn this new process for doing karate. Learn this new process for music theory. Learn this new process for design technology. Learn this new. So there are so many more bombarding things. That during the Michaelmas term, in free time, we only did the Gilbert and Sullivan play. There was just nothing else happened in free time.
Right.
And except playing Escape from Colditz or Risk or Cluedo or Monopoly.
So that sort of from day to day, the 70% of your time and thinking time was classes, and then one extracurricular activity.
Yes, and I think on Thursday afternoons there was Occupation 1 and Occupation 2. I used to do double gardening because I love gardening. I still, flash garden. I still get around. So I do 5 gardens at Summerfields.
Great.
Continuing
Mr. Pryor's
legacy. I do work on his garden, but Rob Langdon lives there now. It just wasn't as a busier school day. There seemed to be a lot more 2 45-minute lessons, about an hour of break, 2 45-minute lessons, lunch, everybody on, no music practice, everybody on their beds reading books or sleeping.
Because when you read recollections from those days, prep and senior, there just seemed to be much more time.
There's just so much more. And there was when I first started working.
Right.
There just was so much more time. But I think I'm incredibly lucky. There's other people rushing off to jobs, constantly running around small circles, and I'm retired at 48, doing exactly what I want to do.